Welcome to Saving the Investor with certified financial planner, investment advisor, and insurance professional Alfie Townsend, president of Advantage Retirement Group.
Good morning, Southwest Florida. This is a special edition of Saving the Investor. I'm Alfie Townsend, Southwest Florida certified financial planner professional, here with Pastor John Antonucci, and you are going to want to stay tuned for the whole show. We're in studio Thursday right now because of the big bill, the big beautiful bill, and we're going to have special guest Byron Donald is going to be joining us in about 8 to 9 minutes. He is going to be here on a Zoom meeting, and I can't wait to ask him tons of questions. And this bill, as of this time, has not passed yet, but he's going to be, it looks like it's going to pass, and he's going to be voting on this bill. But we're going to ask him what's in this bill, right, John? There's a lot of questions out there. And, why the GOP, some of them didn't like it. A lot of them did, and it did change when it went from the Congress to the Senate back. And so we're going to ask him these questions. So I'm excited, so stay tuned. He will be on, and we're going to pepper him with questions, and I can't wait to talk to him.
Yeah, well, the preliminary vote is 219 to 213, and he's waiting to go on the floor to finalize this big, beautiful bill, as you said, Alfie. But we're in studio here on Thursday for a special edition that you're going to hear on Saturday because of this historic vote that's about to take place. And as always, you want to position yourself to be set for retirement, to get you to and through retirement. One of the ways to do that is with certified financial planner Alfie Townsend, who has 40 years experience as a CFP. He's also a fiduciary, which means his responsibility is to you, the individual investor, not to any products or services that he offers here through the Advantage Retirement Group. So grab your coffee, get comfortable. Be sure to jot the phone number down, 239-747-1077. You can visit with Alfie in Fort Myers or Naples. All you have to do is text the word VISIT, V-I-S-I-T, to 239-747-1077 to get a complimentary review of your current income plan and retirement strategy. You also can go to savingtheinvestor.com. Again, that's savingtheinvestor.com. And as Alfie said, we are thrilled to have Congressman Byron Donald with us today. I wish he was in studio so that we can give him a big hug, but he's down there in Washington, been working overnight into the wee hours of the morning. He's one of our most influential voices, and he's got a lot to say about fiscal responsibility, the state of taxes, the future of our country. This is going to be an enlightening conversation. You don't want to miss 1 minute of it, so don't go away at any time. Stay tuned through the whole broadcast. We're going to have him here for a long time. But before we do, the markets are jumping, Alfie.
Oh, yeah.
And you've got some job numbers there that I think the people that are listening to us will be very interested in.
And these job numbers, they were supposed to come out. These are for June, and these numbers were supposed to come out lower than what they did come out. They came out at 147,000 new jobs that were created in June. I think the number that they were looking at was probably 110,000. So more than that, stronger than expected. So that's that's real good. And about half of those came from state and local governments. So, we do have that, but 74,000 did come from, the private sector. So that's cooling off a little bit, John, but, I think once this bill is passed, I can't wait to ask these questions. We're going to see an economy that is rocking and rolling. So this is going to be good stuff. And let's talk about the S&P. So the S&P at the beginning of the year, because of all these tariffs, and that's a question we need to ask, Congressman Byron Donald, because these tariffs, it really spooked the market at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, what was it down? What did it go down?
Over 20%. The S&P was down over 20. I think NASDAQ was hovering at 30. But that means the S&P made up that 20%. So it probably had to make about 27% to get up to make that up, and then be up 6.5% year to date. That's not counting Thursday's number, so that's a good thing. And then we have Dow Jones has gained approximately 4.6% year to date, and we're just at halfway point. So we could hit that double digit by the end of the year, which no one was talking about that.
Then still no rate cuts either, right?
And still no rate cuts, and that is a question we need to ask. But they're talking about 2 rate cuts. And then we're talking about a new Fed chairman at the start of next year.
About firing him yesterday, so
oh yeah, yeah, and that would be Bassett is the Secretary of Treasury, but then that's a good position for him right there. Yeah. But he said if they want me, if President Trump wants me as the Fed chairman, I will go where he wants me to go.
Right.
And that's a great thing. Then you have NASDAQ is up 5.9, so that's a good thing. So there's a lot of good things that are happening, but there's more to come. I think there's more to come. And this bill, let's talk about this bill. When Byron Donalds, if you're just tuning in, we are going to have Byron Donalds at the end of about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. He's going to be on. So you want to stay tuned because he's going to be coming on live from D.C. This is where everything's happening right now, that one big, beautiful bill. And it's he was supposed to be in studio live this morning with us. But
this is a little more exciting that he's about to go on the floor after we get done talking to him.
Yeah, this is big. This is big. But we want to ask him questions, and we already had some questions we were going to ask him, but we didn't know he was still going to be in D.C., and this is exciting because he's going to be able to tell us what's happening right now, at this point. This is like amazing. This is amazing to me. You got our congressman that's right there, and it's going to be, looking at the bill, reading the bill, and knowing, what's good about the bill, what's bad about the bill. And one thing that we know is good about the bill is no tax on tips. I don't get tips, but I wish I did. Yeah. I give tips, but I don't get tips. And so we have that coming, and then we also, Social Security. I didn't think that was, no tax on Social Security at a certain income level, and which is amazing. I didn't think that was going to be put in there at all. So you're going to have seniors that are going to be loving this bill. You're going to have a lot of people that's going to be benefiting from this bill.
Yeah, well, you want to position yourself for what's coming after this big, beautiful bill is passed because the economy is going to begin to rock and roll. And if you're sitting on the sidelines, you want to visit with Alfie Townsend here in Fort Myers or Naples. He has 2 beautiful offices. He does what's called a retirement simulated process, which is a deep dive into your current portfolio to see what's really going on. He's going to make sure you're allocated properly, diversified correctly, not taking undue risk for the amount of return that you're getting each and every year. He's going to expose all the hidden fees that could be eating up your returns. You want to visit with him in Fort Myers or Naples, simply call the operator, text the word VISIT, V-I-S-I-T, to 239-747-1077. Again, the VISIT is what you want to text to 239-747-1077, or go to savingtheinvestor.com. We're getting ready for Byron Donalds to come on.
Yeah, Byron Donalds, stay tuned. If you just joined in, we are going to have our congressman here in Southwest Florida, soon to be our governor. He's going to be running for governor next year, and DeSantis has done a fantastic job, and he will just parlay what's already been done and keep on running with it. That's what DeSantis did when Rick Scott. We've had some great governors here. We have Rick Scott. Jeb Bush even did a good job. So this is a great state, and it's going to be a great run for our congressman. I can't wait. John, it's going to be fun to talk to him about this bill and what's happening. So stay tuned. Our congressman will be right back after this break.
Our welcoming Congressman Byron Donalds to the show. And this is a historic day here in our country. And it looks like the bill is going to get passed, and Congressman Byron Donalds is here, and I'm going to just let you ramble on, my friend.
Well, first, it's good to be with you guys. First, look, this has been a culmination of a lot of work. We started having serious reconciliation meetings the week we got back to town after the November elections. And so from that, and we were having preliminary conversations before that, but they really picked up speed once we realized we had the trifecta, that's what they call it here, when you control both chambers of Congress and you have the White House. So, really for the last 7 months, we've been at this, and it's finally going to get done today. So really this is you have to give first credit has to go to the president. The president, one, had a vision of what we wanted to accomplish, and then his team really was working with both chambers to see this through. Speaker Johnson and leadership team, the chairman, Freedom Caucus members, Main Street members, like everybody really had to really get in a room and work through a lot of these details. The Senate, they moved way quicker than I think the Senate's ever moved, ever, to get the House bill, I guess, amended with Senate language to get it back to us. And then the last 24 hours or so, there's just been heavy negotiations and conversations. People had to get very comfortable with what the Senate was sending back to us, really get into the details, speaking with attorneys, getting clarity on several provisions in order to get the votes, to land the votes. And so we were able to do it all in a little under 7 months. It is one big, beautiful bill, and we move forward.
This is, it is amazing. Now, what was holding it up? I know the Senate bill came back. It was totally different. And there was some things added on there that a lot of GOP did not like. And what were some of those things?
John, the big thing is spending. I mean, look, this deal is a culmination of a lot of things. Obviously, the president's tax policy, tax agenda is in this bill. We reauthorized and make permanent a lot of Tax Cut and Jobs Act from 2017, new things like no tax on tips, overtime. And then we created, I believe the final number is about $5,000 in a new tax deduction for seniors up to a certain income level. I don't have the income level in front of me. So it is in some respects, no tax on Social Security benefits for seniors who are, I think the number's around $70,000 a year for seniors. I think that's the new deduction, but don't quote me on that one. So we were able to get a lot of that stuff through. But the piece that was the holdup was spending. You know, how much were we going to spend to get everything accomplished? And we do have a mandatory spending problem. A House budget, the budget hawks and conservatives were looking at this as an opportunity to reform mandatory spending and to begin to bend the mandatory spending cost curve. And you can do that through budget reconciliation because you don't need Democrat votes to do that. And so we were able to get some changes to Medicaid, work requirements, some work requirements on SNAP, which is new territory, and some other things like that. We were able to also make sure that illegal aliens are not going to be able to access Medicaid benefits or healthcare benefits. And so technically how that works is you'll have a state like California who will use federal dollars to pay all the staff, and then they'll use state dollars to provide quote unquote healthcare. And so what we're saying is, no, the federal government's not going to be a part of that. The spending piece was the thing that was really going to hold it up because I think we have about 50 members who wanted it to be deficit neutral. And I don't think we fully achieved that based upon CBO's numbers, but I think the White House's view is that economic growth is going to be higher than what CBO is estimating. And so we're not going to have those near-term deficits like they were projecting. We'll see how that one actually plays out, in real life. But all in all, we were able to get enough things through and get a lot of concerns from members addressed to be able to pass this bill.
Yeah, because that was a big concern about Medicaid, because getting people off of Medicaid that weren't U.S. citizens. And you're saying that did get in this new bill?
Yeah, what ended up happening, and we're still not still going through it. I mean, we have a good idea of where we're going. Is that there were adjustments to state provider taxes and state payments out of Medicaid, out of CMS. So there were adjustments there. We did put a freeze on provider taxes, which is where states would tax the health insurance providers that provide Medicaid in the state. And that would allow the Medicaid providers to increase their fees, which then would allow them to get more money out of the federal government. So we're actually bringing a lot of that stuff to a close because it was really like a money laundering operation at the end of the day to pump more federal money into states. The thing that we didn't accomplish, which I thought we could, I hope that we would, but we didn't, was actually changing what we call the FMAP, which is the federal matching program for Medicaid, and really putting an end to Medicaid expansion, because Medicaid expansion is a major driver of our debt. And this is where you have an able-bodied adult who's on Medicaid, who's not working, but they're getting federal healthcare benefits. And our view is, no, you need to be working, and also that we shouldn't be paying for able-bodied adults at a higher rate than we pay for the elderly, disabled, poor children, and pregnant women. That's just, there's a real imbalance there that we're going to have to rectify in the future.
Well, that's going to be huge. And maybe in the midterm next year, we can get that passed. Now, there's going to be a lot of new money coming in. There's going to be a lot, with no tips on or no tax on tips and overtime. That's going to be huge. And I don't think they're taking that in consideration, how much more money people are going to have in their pocket. And this is really the middle class. This is a middle class bill. This isn't for the one percenters out there that they're always talking about.
And is there limits on that? I mean, is that limited to a certain amount of an individual?
No.
Oh, wow,
No,
that's great.
My understanding is there's not limits on it. So, this is something that's really going to help people who are middle class, working hard, lower middle class, trying to find their way. This is really going to help them. Think your people who DoorDash, who do Shipt, who are, working at restaurants, valet, Uber drivers. Like this is going to be a big thing for the country. People are going to be able to keep more money in their pocket. So we believe the president's tax policy is actually going to be very stimulative. And so we'll see what economic growth actually turns out to be. But I think we could see, GDP next year, maybe 3.5%.
That would be fantastic.
And then the other piece you have is you have the 100% depreciation that's in this. So you can deduct. So if you go out and get equipment, build physical plant, etc., you can expense all of it in that calendar year. That's going to be really big for CapEx next year.
Oh, yeah.
We're really excited about the bill, and we're excited about what we really think we can accomplish. And I didn't even get to some of the energy components, which really haven't been talked about, because that's just stuff where we knew we were going to, give the president and his team more flexibility to explore for oil, really begin to help bolster our energy matrix. You get cheap energy in an economy with the right tax policy, you can really take off.
And what would be the top 2 or 3 things you would say in this bill that would impact your constituents here in Southwest Florida?
Definitely the threshold of no tax on Social Security and no tax on tips. That stuff's going to be big for people in Southwest Florida. We're a hospitality area, so all of our workers who work in hospitality, they are going to do very well in this tax policy. And our seniors, the ones who are, if they're in that spot where, they've gone back to work and so they're working, they're also on Social Security, or even if they're just on Social Security by themselves, they actually win in this bill. This is definitely tailored towards working people and middle class people. I mean, look, the top rates were held in place. And so the Democrats would say, oh, it's tax cuts for the rich. The truth is that's been tax policy for the last decade in the United States now. That's now permanent, and it's going to stay that way. So this whole tax cuts for the rich thing is just stupid. It's not really true. We just kept those rates consistent. But we really did work here to bolster middle-class families, working poor families, and small businesses. Small businesses are going to do very well in this bill.
Oh, no, it looks like it. And can you explain, Congressman, how does this, when you have more money coming into the coffer there, how does that create, to reduce that deficit that we have? How does it, can you explain how that works to reduce the deficit with, so much more money coming in?
So right now, last year, we raised about $5 trillion in taxes, and the federal government spent $6.8 trillion. So the real formula for reducing the deficits is not just cutting spending. It is actually also raising new revenues through economic growth. And so people will think that, oh, well, if you raise taxes, you get more revenue. That's not true. What happens when you raise taxes is you actually get less economic growth. And so economic growth is a better predictor of tax revenue than tax rates. For argument, let me put it to make it simpler for people listening. Historically, the United States has raised about 17% of the gross domestic product in tax revenue to the federal government. Under President Trump's tax policy, that percentage raised to 20% of the gross domestic product or GDP, right? So if you have a growing economy and under his tax policy, we're getting 20% of that GDP, what that means is you're going to get more tax revenue in, more tax revenue decreases that delta between what we spend and what we take in. And then some of the other pieces we did in Medicaid, in SNAP, to actually have enforcement, actually be able to do eligibility checks, getting illegals off these programs. We believe that's actually going to decrease our mandatory spending while you're also increasing revenue. That's how you can begin to shrink your deficits. And then if we can get real long-term entitlement reforms in the country done, and people are listening to your show, we have to reform the entitlement system. There's not a if, it's not a political question. Well, if I vote for these other people, they'll leave it in place. Those systems are going to go insolvent in about 7 years. And if they go insolvent, federal law calls for a mandatory 22% benefit cut to every senior, regardless of your income. So Congress has to reform these programs. If we reform them in the appropriate way, we will further decrease these deficits, and we actually could get into a posture of being able to pay down the debt or slow down the rate of borrowing. And slowing down the rate of borrowing at this point is just as important as paying down the debt itself.
Well, we saw in his first term that the economy was rocking. I mean, would you say that because of this bill that's being passed right now, that it's going to actually increase from what we had pre-COVID?
I think so. I think our economy is going to get back to where it was pre-COVID. And then the other piece of this is the deregulation aspects. The president's administration, they've been moving very fast to deregulate a large part of the American economy that the Biden administration was regulating to death. I mean, the digital asset space is one of them. There was no regulatory framework in Washington, but what they were doing was essentially Operation Choke Point 2.0, where they were just coming out with findings, opinions, calling people in for questioning in the administrative state. So it was so hard for people to actually do business in our country. So they would just not do business here. They would go overseas and do business and try to figure out if there was a way to do business in the United States. President Trump's changing all that. So you combine deregulation, smart regulation, not stupid, archaic regulation that makes no sense, or just these regulatory layers that really stifle economic growth and incentives and capital raises in the United States. You combine that with smart tax policy that really helps people who are working every day keep more money in their pocket, so they're feeling like they're a part of the American success story. It's really a win for the future of this country.
I love it. And then, he's one of the first presidents in a long time that loves tariffs. He loves tariffs, and Wall Street wasn't liking it at first. The market really, went down quite a bit earlier in this year, but it made it all back, and now we have a nice little big run going. How does tariffs come into play that since we haven't had tariffs the way they are right now, how's that going to help us?
Well, the last estimate from the White House that I heard, which was yesterday, is I think there's $111 billion of new revenue in from tariffs. I think when it comes to tariff policy overall, to me, it's still really about resetting global trade agreements with a lot of other nations. I saw Vietnam came in and finally cut a deal. I think the Vietnam deal is done. The president announced that this morning. And so
that was 40% tariff.
Yeah. And so apparently that deal has come to a close. And so the tariff policy is a way you can raise some money, I think, in the interim. But it's much more about making sure that American businesses are having a fair deal across the world. And so is the American consumer here at home and domestic production here at home. And so those things are critically important. Tariffs, I would just say more just like icing on the cake, because I don't think unless you just completely get off the entire Internal Revenue Code, you're not going to rely on tariff policy. I mean, look, the United States pre-1915, we raised our revenues by tariffs. That's how we raised most federal revenues. But that was that's a different time. It's going to be I don't think we're getting rid of the Internal Revenue Code anytime soon. Although I know a lot of people wish that we would, but we're not there anytime soon.
Then you have Japan, though they're sort of holding out, and that's a pretty big trading partner there. So what do you think is going to happen to Japan?
Japan will come in. They'll come in. I mean, because at the end of the day, everybody needs access to the American markets. That's just a fact. And so, Japan will come in. They're driving a hard bargain. Canada's going to drive a hard bargain, but they'll come in. They'll land because, you can
Well,
only hold out for so long without having the full access that you like to America.
yeah. Well, let's transition to your run for governor. You're going to make a good governor as you, come behind DeSantis, who has done a tremendous job. I mean, I know we have problems here, especially with insurance, homeowners and auto insurance. I mean, what are some of your plans and vision to tackle some of the problems that we have here in Southwest Florida?
Well, a couple things. One, I think, the legislature a couple of years ago, they went through some tort reform issues and legislation, and it looks like insurance rates are starting to come down. What we're hearing from the auto insurance companies is they're starting to push their rates lower. We're also hearing from the property and casualty guys. They want to apply with the Office of Insurance Regulation to lower their premium over the next year or so. So things are looking that they're trending in the right direction. The big thing is we have to be vigilant about helping our insurance companies stay in the game with people when a storm comes. And then I think the one piece about insurance, and this is important for people to understand, and I'm glad we're talking about this. There's a portion of insurance that's really just tied to the replacement cost of the home. So the more expensive it is to build homes, the higher the insurance costs are going to be. Because what they're doing is they're trying to figure out what the replacement cost is of property. If you look at your home insurance policy, they have a replacement cost in there. And so for a lot of people who've been in Florida for a long time, even though you might have bought your house for, say, $200,000, the replacement cost for that house is probably $700,000. So the insurance company is having a right for 700,000, not the 200,000 or the 250 that somebody bought the house for. The other piece is we want to try to find ways to help the carriers hold more to be able to have more flexibility with the capital requirements on their balance sheets to make it more give them some incentives to do more business in the state of Florida. Last thing is dealing with the reinsurance companies. I think we have to have a much more of a direct conversation or relationship with the reinsurance companies. Essentially, reinsurance companies, they insure probably about half the risk on the balance sheets of the insurance company that people write their policy with. So how the reinsurance companies evaluate the risk of Florida, that goes a long way. We think our building code is held up quite well. So we think that when you look at Florida in terms of a risk profile, even though we've had to deal with some devastating storms, to somebody's individual house, they've actually been able to survive these storms and get back on their feet pretty quickly. And so there's some other solutions that we're kind of looking at, but that stuff's not ready for prime time yet. It's kind of still out there in the ether. But there's some other stuff we're looking at as well.
Good. And the water quality this year, I've been here, I grew up in Florida, Miami mostly, and Tampa, and then been here for about 18, 20 years now. So the water this year, it seems like it's been the best it's been out on the boat. It's very, very clear, but then we got rainy season, and then you got the Lake O just seems to be opening up everything. And what are you going to do about that, or what can you do about that? I know there's talk about running it out to the Everglades and stuff like that, but I would love to hear that. And those were a lot of the questions from our clients too, was the water quality here in Southwest Florida. It seems like we get more of that pour over than they do on the East Coast, and it'd be nice that none of them got it, but is there big plans for that?
Yeah, we're going to finish the work that's in front of us. There's about another decade of work in restoring the Everglades, and the price tag is roughly $5 billion. But the cost is irrelevant to the value it is to the state of Florida. I think even in Southwest Florida, where we've had concerns with algal blooms a decade ago, if you actually look today, there's been more water released from Lake Okeechobee down the Caloosahatchee River. But the reason why you're not seeing the same level of algal blooms is because a lot of the work that's been done in Everglades restoration. The C43 reservoir is supposed to come online later this year. I think I'm going to be there for the grand opening of that. And that's going to go a long way to helping Southwest Florida in particular. I think for the entire state, we just have to be consistent. We have to finish the work. And ecology, like this isn't a building project, like you're going to build a hotel or build a planned unit development. This was a project plan that really was going to take 20 years to complete because you're talking about the ecology of the southern peninsula of Florida. We're halfway through the work right now. We have another decade to go. As governor, we're going to continue all the projects. We're going to keep those things funded because once we get this done and out of the way, we'll have a restored Everglades system, which will help the ecology of Florida monumentally for decades to come.
That's going to be a landmark, right? That's going to be that's going to be a big piece.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know that Governor DeSantis is talking about $1,000 rebate. I come from New Jersey. We used to get yearly rebates because the taxes are astronomical up there. And he's talking about possibly limiting taxes for seniors, which how in the world would you do that? And is that even a possibility?
Well, I think there's a lot of people trying to study this and look at this in real detail, and I think that's important. When the first, I guess, proposal came out about just full elimination, I think when you're talking property taxes, you got to tell people what it means. And so what that would mean is the sales tax in Florida would have to go up to 13%. So, you tell people that and they shudder because they're like, oh, wait, the sales tax is 13%, but I don't have property taxes. So it's just one of those things where we're going to have to find a solution to it. And I think the rebate is a good temporary step until you figure out the permanent solution. One of the big things people need to understand is that local governments have not changed their millage rates. So as property values have gone up, local governments have kept their millage rates the same, which means they're just taking in more tax revenue. And so if you look at, there was a table I was looking at the other day of property taxes over the last decade. Over the last decade, property tax revenue to local government, it has doubled. The millage rate has largely not changed, but because people came to Florida, started buying property, the property tax has generated double revenue for local governments. The worst offenders in our state are school boards. School boards do not go to a rollback rate to save taxpayers money. They've just been letting their millage stay consistent and taking all the appreciation. And so there's going to have to be a serious conversation between local governments and the state government of you can either do right by homeowners and go to the rollback rate and provide relief that way, or we will take action through the Constitution and reformat property taxes. Look, I'll just tell you, the governor might beat me to the punch on that one, and there's only one governor at a time. So Governor DeSantis might beat everybody to the punch. We'll see what his final proposal is. But there's multiple ways to do this. Another way to look at it is basically looking at a homestead property in Florida, not a non-homesteaded property. You look at homesteaded property in Florida, and essentially you could create a hard cap, if you will, for homestead exemption, something like the first million of value. So if you take the first million of value on homesteaded property, that will provide major relief to middle-class families in our state. And then then you go on from there.
Gotcha. Well, listen, we appreciate your time. I know you're in DC here. It's very busy time for all of you over there, but we appreciate this time and we appreciate everything that you do. We look forward to calling you governor next year.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Listen, I appreciate you guys. I really, really do. Looks like it's time to move to the floor. But thanks, guys. Yeah. I appreciate you.
Okay.
Keep up the great work.
You. Bless you.
Welcome back to Saving the Investor with certified financial planner Alfie Townsend. What a tremendous segment with Congressman Byron Donalds as he just left us to go on to the House floor to vote for the big, beautiful bill. and hopefully it's going to be on President Trump's desk tomorrow, 4th of July, as we celebrate 249 years of this great country. He's about to sign it. The topics, we discussed with him, we're going to get into a little bit of a recap about that and how it affects you in your retirement process. But you want to get your complimentary copy of Alfie's Financial Freedom Strategies Guide. What a great time to get it, 4th of July weekend. All you have to do is text the word FREEDOM, FREEDOM, to 239-747-1077. If you want to get Alfie's brand new Financial Freedom Strategies Guide, it's free. It's for you. Pick up the phone, call the operator, or text the word FREEDOM to 239-747-1077. 1077. And Alfie, we had him a longer time than we thought because he could have been pulled into the floor at any minute. But he talked about a lot of great things, from tariffs to taxes to insurance. I mean, what really stood out to you? And I think this bill is going to really get, if the markets are rocking now, I can't wait to see after this is signed.
Oh, yeah, the markets have done very well. Markets, close, of course, on Friday. So, but with that, I think what really, hit a chord with me is no taxes on tips. There's so many people. He was talking about how it's going to help Florida, because if you think about there's a lot of hospitality here, a lot of waiters and waitresses and Uber drivers. I didn't even think about the Uber drivers so there's a lot of people that get tips, and now when they get their money, restaurant people and waiters and waitresses, when they get their paycheck, and not to have to pay 20, 30%, 25% on that money, that is going to create so much more wealth for them, but it's also going to have more money spent. So when you're talking about what drives the economy is consumer spending.
Sure.
So when you have consumer spending, and if that bill didn't get passed and it was going to go back to the old rates, those rates were going to be astronomical. They would have been back
at $1,500 a year more per family, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was going to be a whole lot more. And then, so you have that. You also have, no tax on Social Security, up to certain levels. So that's big too. And so a lot of people are going to benefit from this. It's not a rich person's bill. It's not at all.
Because AOC was saying the tax on tips was only to $25,000, but it sounded like from what he said,
there was no limit. You asked, that was a great question you asked, John. You said, what is the limit? And there was not a limit on this.
They must have taken that out. Either the Senate or the House pulled it out.
So to have no limit on tax on tips, now overtime, think about that, overtime, to have no tax on overtime. A lot of people are, instead of, when you're overtime, that almost puts you to another tax bracket anyway. Let's talk about that. So when you work overtime, you're making more money than your regular time, obviously. But then what happens is it puts you into a different tax bracket. So you're up. If you're, in a bracket that you're making, $150,000, $200,000 a year, and then you're in overtime, now you're going from like a 22% tax bracket to a 30%. 27. So, you're looking at saving some 27% on, it could be $50,000, $100,000. That's a lot of money that's extra in your pocket that that's what that's going to do, John. I just thought about this. This is going to encourage people to work to work overtime.
Yeah, why not?
Because they're going to make more money, and then they're going to keep more money. So this is, that's why I really think if you haven't had your portfolio checked out, you see all this stuff and then again, the deficit, they're working on things to bring down that deficit. They all know they got to get that debt down. And he says something that, if we don't get the debt under control, what it's going to do, how it's going to have to take benefits away from Social Security.
Well, even the entitlements, he said 7 years as the clock is running. I mean, if they don't take care of that, there's going to be 22% cuts across the board, that would hurt so many people. They've got to do something.
They got to do something.
We got 3 branches of government. Let's get it done.
Yeah, we got to get it done. So, but it's amazing to me. We started this radio show, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and to be able to have a show that our congressman calls in on, gave us his time on a day like this.
When it was up till 4 in the morning, I think.
That's historic. That historic day that that pretty humbled by that. But yeah, I think if you haven't had your portfolio checked out, if you haven't had your income plan checked out, if you haven't had your whole plan checked out, give us a call. We have what we call a retirement simulator. We'll look at everything that you have in place right now. And what we'll do is we'll show you what we can put in place and what we found out about your plan. And it will be night and day. It will show you what we can do and what you're currently doing. And you're going to see the big difference for yourself. And this is the time, because the markets are going to take off. The markets are going to take off because we got trillions of dollars that President Trump negotiated businesses to come in here and invest here in the United States. When he was talking about the golden years, he wasn't just using that as a metaphor. He was talking about it as he really believes it. I really think he believes it.
Yeah, I believe it now.
He sold me. He sold me. But I think it's going to be a market like we've never seen before. And this is a time to give us a call. John will let you know how to get a hold of us. You can call for a 15-minute phone call, and we can have a conversation with you, or you can just say, you know what, let's just call for an appointment. Come in, show you what we have, show you what you have. Can you put me in a better position, yes or no? And I think you'll know the answer once you see it.
Yeah, the choice is yours. You can either sit down with Alfie in Fort Myers or Naples and get the full retirement simulator process, which is a deep dive into your current portfolio to see what's really going on. Alfie's going to put together an income plan. It's going to take you back 5 years side by side with your current portfolio, and you're going to see on a big screen in his office exactly how his portfolio would have compared to yours. Do a deep dive, make sure expose all the hidden fees eating up your returns, make sure you're allocated properly, diversified correctly, not taking undue risk for the amount of return. He's going to make sure that you're being rebalanced regularly so that the asset class mix that you desire in your retirement plan is steady and on course. Listen, you can visit with him in Fort Myers or Naples. Text the word VISIT, V-I-S-I-T, to 239-747-1077. If you don't text, just pick up the phone, call the operator, tell him I want to visit with Alfie Townsend, 239-747-1077. And if you don't have time to come and visit and sit down with him, you could do what's called a 15-minute checkup with one of Alfie's trusted advisors here in the office. It will really go through really quickly what you have and see if you're on course for a good retirement plan and strategy. All you have to do is text the number 1515 to 239-747-1077. And that'll take you to a landing page, and you'll get a calendar, and you can make an appointment at your convenience to talk with one of Alfie's trusted advisors here at the Advantage Retirement Group. Text the number 1515 to 239-747-1077, or you can go to savingtheinvestor.com. Again, that's savingtheinvestor.com. You'll find a wealth of information about Alfie, his company, and all the services that he offers here through the Advantage Retirement Group. And Alfie, as we celebrate 4th of July weekend, it was exciting to have Congressman Byron Donalds. I know we wanted him in studio to look into his eyes, but I'm sure before his governor, we'll have him back in here, won't we?
We'll definitely have him back in here. And I remember back, and I was in 9th grade, 1976. Bicentennial year, 200, and now we're looking at next year, 250. I can't believe it, 50 years later.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Man, where does time fly?
Yeah.
But all I know is we are blessed to be in the best country there is, without a doubt. I pray every night. I say, we could have been born anywhere, John. We could have been born, just in a hut over in Africa. But we were born here in the place that everybody is, wanting to come to, and we're blessed to be in the best country in the world. So we are going to be celebrating 249 years tonight, Thursday night, or tomorrow night, Friday night. But it's going to be a great celebration. And you got to be careful with those fireworks. So I'm telling you, they're dangerous.
From my window.
yeah. I'll be watching them from outside, far away. But this was a special day to have Congressman Byron Donalds here and spend a half hour here, to talk to us from D.C. live from the Capitol. That was pretty amazing. So this is a special edition of Saving the Investor. We did record this Thursday so we could hear all about this bill and really ask some good questions on it. And watch our TV show. It's on every Sunday at 11 o'clock. Call Saving the Investor on NBC. So 11 to 11:30. I hope everybody has a happy 4th. Until next week, be blessed.